Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be in Denver. I'm tuckered out from walking side stage. They told us before. I've never heard this before. They'll have oxygen tanks side stage for us pansies from North Carolina and Tennessee. So if you guys will know if one of us exits really quickly side stage, you know what's going on.
And there it is, right there.
Is that it?
Yeah. It's actually not a joke. I thought you were joking.
No, I'm serious. They told us that.
It's very hard to tell if Chris is being serious. Well, how was everybody's Monday morning? Monday afternoon? Hopefully tonight is better than your day's been. That's what we're believing. Well, so if you didn't know what you're here for Q&A. So hopefully you've got some questions ready, and we'll do our best to have some answers if we can, and if not, I'm sure we'll find it along the way. So I'll go down the line, let's introduce ourselves, and then whoever has a question, let's be ready to go. And then if it's a really good Q&A, we're gonna have more questions than we have time allotted. So if I don't have a chance to get to your question, please don't be offended. It's not personal. We just have to be done by 6 o'clock. So let's go through and let's get started.
I'm Chris with Elevation, and I'm so, again, pleased to be with you guys. Got a wife and 2 kids back home. Just had to have a conversation with my boy who didn't want to take a shower tonight. Just doing a little parenting backstage. Also, can we just all sing happy birthday to Cody right now? Today is his birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Cody. Happy birthday to you. Thank you very much.
I've been a part of Elevation Church for about 8 years, and I've been on the team for about 7. This is my handsome husband right here.
My name is John Sal. I've been a part of Elevation Church and worship for 5 years.
Hey, I'm Anna. I've been a part of Elevation Church and our worship team for about 2.5 years now.
My name's Cody, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, part of the Belonging Church there, and today is my 30th birthday. So I'm spending a big old birthday with you guys tonight, and I'm so excited about it. And I'm opening the night tonight. I have a beautiful family, my wife Carrie, my son Canyon in Kingston. We just had a son 2 months ago, and it was really hard to leave them today. I saw them yesterday, but I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And I'm Alex. I'm the director of touring for Elevation Worship. I've been at the church for about 7 years. So, who's got a question? Right down here.
What makes, how is a worship team united? Like for you guys, how do you guys stay united?
How does the worship team stay united? Or what are some tips for how a worship team can stay united? Cody, why don't you jump in and...
Sure. I think it's important just to be real friends, you know, and really invest in each other's lives and go deep with people. And anytime you get a group of people together, there's sometimes going to be problems. It's just going to happen. It's just how we are, you know. We're imperfect people. And I think it's how you work through those problems that's so key. And really just serving one another, putting each other before yourselves, loving each other, being able to go in the trenches with each other in your lives and getting involved with each other's lives, I think is so key, you know. And so that brings unity when you really know the people that you're leading worship with. And that goes for, not just for something like this, touring. This is kind of only a small part of what we really do. That goes for church at home, just really knowing people that you're with day in and day out, knowing what they're going through and being with them and serving them in it.
Jenna, can you speak to maybe some things that Elevation Worship does to help?
Yeah, I love everything Cody just said. That's so true. A few practicals that we do at our church. We have what's called team night, So our church has 18 now different locations, so it can be a little tricky. We're still trying to figure out how to find ways to all be unified. But we do a team night where we get all of our campuses, our campus worship teams together, and we just have a night where we, our worship pastor casts vision, we have a time of worship, and we also have a time set aside that's like intentional time for us to just hang out and talk. So that's been super helpful. And then we also have campus-specific team nights. So our campuses, each one, they'll have their own team nights with like their campus pastor. That's been like super helpful. But also, we've kind of charged all of our worship leaders with owning pastoring your people. And so I think just that, even since we've done that, and because before we used to have our worship leaders train, just like travel around to different campuses, and now we have a specific campus worship leader at each campus that's in charge of that team, and we've just seen so much like growth and unity just from simply having a little bit of consistency, and so creating that when you can, I think, is super important.
That's great. Did you have a question on the second row? Yeah, you? What year did the band get together?
Circa 2006. No, so the church. So we're from a church in North Carolina. The church started in 2006, and we just all honestly were a part of the church. We came to be a part of the church, and along the way we've gotten to write songs for the church and do what we're doing now. So it's kind of we would all have different times that we got involved, but we've been doing it for some time. Great question.
Yes, right here.
Can you walk us through like a typical rehearsal night for you? Like, do you have a particular format that you use? And you know, how do you get everybody on band, musicians, singers, everything?
Yeah, I'll start just briefly. I would say early on in our ministry, we set up a higher standard on what we expected from people coming in prepared from a preparation standpoint. So I was in some ministries and led ministries in college that rehearsal was like the first time everybody was seeing music. Was was the first time people were looking at charts and everything. And when we got involved at church early on, we realized one of the best things I think we can do to respect everyone's time during this rehearsal is, number one, put an expectation on the vocalist or on the musician, the band guy, whatever, to show up knowing their part, so that rehearsal is truly more of like a run through. So we call it rehearsal, but really people are showing up. They've been given, by that point we use Planning Center, they've been given the charts, of course, the MP3s. We've grown to now, we have like a lead team of musicians who during the week are doing basically like tutorials for guitar parts. So if you're guitar one, you've got a guitar video that I think they have a Facebook page, if they still have that. Maybe it's, or no, I think it's actually on Planning Center now. So they have that part like highlighted. They can hear their part really well to prepare. Same thing with keys, guitar, whatever. Vocal harmony demos are posted on Planning Center, so they can show up and should know all their parts. So in other words, we try to make sure there's no excuse for someone to show up other than just not preparing. From our end, we've tried to equip them the best we can to show up on in different campuses. Some campuses show up on Saturday, have a Saturday service, some on Sunday morning early, but maybe rehearsal lasts on a Sunday morning campus, rehearsal and run through is probably all 2.5 hours from like plug in till you're done with everything. So does that help at all? I think that's one of the better things.
I'll say one thing too. I think it's good to have a person on your team we call him a music director, and that's like a person of leadership on your team that's different than the worship leader, that can really kind of guide the band through if there's ever any hiccups or they're kind of appointed to know more about the music than anybody else does, really. They're kind of appointed to say, hey, well, you kind of know what's going on with everybody's parts roughly. And you have to just identify that person who's a great leader, who's musically really knowledgeable, really gifted. And a lot of times it's like a bass player or a keys player or someone that can watch the worship leader, and they're calling stuff in the middle. And so a lot of times in a rehearsal, if we get to a place where you can tell that people are kind of calling wrong chord or hitting wrong chords, and maybe they didn't prepare as much as they should have, the music director kind of steps in like, hey guys, let's run this bridge and make sure we're hitting, the C, G, A minor, F, and that kind of thing. So having someone like that can kind of be a liaison between the worship leader and the band is a really good thing to do too.
That's great. Another question? Yes, right here.
First of all, happy birthday, Cody.
Thank you.
Happy 30. My question is, what are some of your musical inspirations and influences, artists, or anyone that you get inspiration from?
Sure. I have a lot. So it's kind of hard to nail them down. I listen to a lot of music. On the worship side, I listen to all kinds of music. I listen to worship music all the time. I listen to pop music. I grew up on country music. My dad was a country musician for like 30-something years. And so I've listened to a lot of stuff. On the worship side, not just saying this because they're sitting next to me, but Elevation for sure. I'm very inspired by everything that they do. Literally every song that you guys do tonight is unbelievably amazing. And I'm so blown away that you're playing for almost 2 hours and every song is gonna be awesome. But Hillsong, Bethel, I love Phil Wickham vocally, he's amazing, on the pop side, I could go for hours on this, but One Republic, Bon Iver, Need to Breathe, I'm just kind of going off the cuff there, but yeah.
That's great. Yes, over here.
What's his name? Tony. And that's his stage name too? All right. Come on, Tony. Use your gift for the Lord.
Awesome. Yes, right here. How overwhelming was the Grammy nominee?
It truly just felt out of place the whole time. Completely out of place. I don't think any one of us knew what to do with ourselves. I don't know. The morning that they announced the Grammys, I had no idea that the Grammys were being announced. It wasn't even on my radar that we were even a possibility. I was in the Target parking lot with my wife, and I got a text from someone saying, "Congratulations, bro." And I'm like, "What are you saying?" But no, we, not to just make it all spiritual, but truly, we just love what we're doing for the church. That would be the epitome of icing on the cake. Never something we're attaining, striving for or trying to attain, and it's unbelievable privilege for sure. I couldn't believe, we were there and got nominated. But thank you.
That's awesome. Yes, right here. The question was, are you all from different campuses, or are you all at one campus?
So yeah, there are 3 of us that are at one location, which would be our broadcast location, and then my wife actually serves at another campus, which is actually within 10 minutes of our broadcast. And so, but there is a staff worship leader at every location at our church, and so we also operate and have volunteer worship leaders who co-lead. But this team, we're a little bit together, a little bit split up. We'll pop into other campuses to visit and go, co-lead with another staff worship leader. So yeah.
Yeah. Front row, you were itching for it, I could tell.
How do you guys do your songwriting?
Songwriting process. So there'd be so much to dive into. I think, you know, I feel like for us, we liken it to like digging for gold and like kind of going on a mining excavation. The reason we kind of have this like picture for us is that it helps us set expectations that typically for us, songs haven't fallen out of the sky in one sitting and everything is given to us from heaven. So it really, most of the time, feels like we're digging one layer underneath the soil and we get a little bit, and then we're going to chip away and dig another layer and go deep enough and keep going deep. And I think I said it helps us set expectation because for us, having expectations properly set in writing truly helps, like not kind of getting over the fear of throwing out any idea at any time and knowing the idea may stick or it may not, and it may just be simply like a scaffolding to get to another lyric or just a gateway for something else. And I think for us, I know initially when I began writing, it was like I held on to every idea from just preciously. I was like, this is it. This has got to be the chorus, right? Because this feels right. And now it's like, this might be chorus 1 out of 11 choruses that, or this may be tweak 1, or maybe this is, just digging underneath a little bit and you chip away and eventually you get to, find a diamond or something. And once you've dug deep enough or chipped away at enough things. And so for our team, it does help. I think it's helped us get past the fear of being vulnerable and throwing out stuff in a writing session quicker, because we're like, maybe the idea is, there at the start, maybe it's not. What else would you say, Cody?
A lot of it is like, you always have to be ready for an idea, to like capture an idea at any moment. And I use the voice memo app. I think everybody that writes songs up here would do that. And my notes, And some of my voice memos sound really pretty, and like I'm at a piano and all that. And some of them I'm in my car and I'm like beatboxing the drums because I definitely don't want to forget like this part that I hear in my head, and it sounds totally ridiculous. But just kind of always being willing to just capture every idea. And even if it just feels so dumb, because you never know what's going to happen with that. And then just sit down at your instrument, if you play an instrument, or with someone else if they play. Just sit down and pour your heart out to God, whether that's even just journaling something, or that's the best way to start. And then you kind of come around after that and just kind of craft it and kind of pick out the gold and get with other writers that can help you do that. And it's a muscle too. 90% of the time it feels like no fun, and it's like so hard, and because it's just like working out a muscle. But the more that you work it out and the more that you're diligent to just sit down and do it, and the better you'll get at it and the more fluid it becomes. And that 10%, that's amazing. There's nothing like that feeling when you discover like an amazing idea and you're helping people connect to God through a song that came out of your heart, so.
You have any voice memos you want to share?
What's that?
Do you have voice memos you want to share?
No, I wish this isn't about me, it's about my wife, but she's not even here, so I'm gonna tell a story. It's kind of rude not to tell a story in front of her, but she's gonna hate that I told a story. She had this voice memo the other day.
You gotta do it.
What?
I said you have to tell it.
Well, I don't have it. It would be way funnier if I had it, but she would really hate me if I showed it to you. But it was so funny because I said, we were laughing so hard at this voice memo idea because she literally just sang like 2 notes, and it was the same note into a voice memo. It was like this, and that was it. And I found it on her phone the other day because I was looking for another thing on her phone. I found it and I listened to it, and we were dying laughing because I just said, whenever we teach a songwriting class, we have to play this for people, because in her mind, for whatever reason, in that moment, she thought she had something that she had to remember. And that's how important it is to put down every idea that you think of, because you just never know. And now it's funny because it literally doesn't make any sense. But in the moment, she's like, I gotta remember this. So just capture everything. You never know.
So good.
That's great. Can I get somebody in the back? I've been picking on people in the front. Yes, I see you. You were wiggling there.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna totally like fangirl because I'm actually from Charlotte. My campus is UC, so I'm really excited to be here.
What are you doing here?
I'm going to school.
Oh,
I really miss home, so I'm really excited to be
oh
here.
my gosh. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm sorry. What is you guys' favorite album that you've written thus far?
Favorite album thus far?
I mean, it feels maybe like a cop-out, but I would definitely say Hallelujah You're Below, which is our most recent. Good chance it's because it's the newest, but I definitely love every one of the songs on there. Yeah, that'd be it for me. We have a new album coming out in a few weeks. But that's all I'll say about that. I don't think I'm supposed to say anything.
There you go. You heard it here first. Yes.
I wanted to know what you guys do to encourage growth and excellence in your ministry, and then also just the culture of worship in your ministry and your church.
What are some things that we do to help encourage growth in our ministry and just a better culture in our ministry?
I feel like keeping like an open line of communication between your team is like kind of crucial. I know it sounds so baseline and like basic, but like there can be, especially with us traveling, there can be like a lot of time that goes by that we don't really like take intentional time to like communicate with our teams. And so I think keeping an open line of communication. Also, one thing that we always like kind of charge our worship leaders with is like, who are you developing? Who are you basically developing to replace you? If you have that mindset and you're always like in this mode of like, I need to keep my hands open. I can't just like hoard every opportunity. Like, who am I raising up? That's something that has to, as leaders, and it doesn't matter if you're in worship or any part of ministry, like always finding someone to mentor and to lead and develop, I feel like is like something that's been like key for us as we've like seen a lot of growth. And I think too, just kind of going back to what Cody was saying, like truly care about people. Don't just care about what they can do for you or their gift, even like care about them as a person and really like be friends with them. And I know it's harder, easier said than done a lot of times, but I feel like if you can just create like a family atmosphere, it's harder for people to want to throw in the towel when they're like walking away from a family rather than just something they do on Sunday morning. So
I think practically too, we record a lot of things. So we record a lot of rehearsals or every experience on a weekend or service on a weekend. It's recorded for the person who might be doing a ministry moment or giving the welcome, and it's recorded for the worship set. And then I guess the production director at that campus posts it online by Monday morning. So we, for them to basically watch playback, you know, and just kind of look at what, how it went. We also do the same thing for when we have a midweek rehearsal. So like back home, we're gonna have one tomorrow for our campus, and we're gonna use, we call it dark room, but it's basically a midweek rehearsal. We're gonna use it as a way to bring in someone younger and give them a rep in a really safe environment. It's just a rehearsal space on a Tuesday. And then also it lets us kind of get a feel for, of course, like what's gonna be happening on the weekend. We'll record that, and if need be, we'll send that out to everybody. So if we're doing like a special transition from this music moment into this ministry moment into something else, then we'll send this out. We have someone on our team who was actually just out this weekend named Lou. And she's really gifted at being able to communicate from stage and carry moments. And whenever she's been on for carrying a ministry moment in the weekend, we've tried to make sure that we capture her doing that in a run-through environment so that we can have that to send out to others if they're wanting to somewhat emulate, you know, the vibe. We talk about tone a lot. Don't just copy what she's saying, but like look at how she's communicating it, how she transitioned from this worship song or this praise song. And so we try to nitpick just like any coach would, watching playback with their player. We try to do that. John, Sal, and Jenna particularly are really involved in trying to provide that feedback weekly for younger worship leaders.
I would just say another thing that I admire about these guys is they lead the way for our teams in being coached and submitting themselves to the leadership. So just because they've arrived on a platform doesn't mean that they're not taking vocal lessons, that they're not trying to stretch themselves as being leaders. I think they really lead the way for the rest of our teams. It's a part of our culture is that, if Roger Federer is the greatest tennis player, if he still feels like he needs to have a coach, then who am I to think that I don't need to have a coach? And so I think that that's kind of trickled down throughout our team. And so I know you and Cody takes vocal lessons as well. And so that's one thing that I feel like is real strong for our team. So 2 more questions. That's all we have time for. Let's go with you right here. It's a great question.
I'm gonna let one of the girls answer it. I will say, don't spend too much time on social media.
That is so true.
For real. She said, she's a teenager, and she was saying, just basically any advice to deal with the culture today, how to get through, this season of her life and everything. So
I feel like there's so much, this is a given, but a lot of times we don't always do it, but there's so much value in just really immersing yourself into God's Word. I feel like that's like one of the biggest things that's kind of helped me. Anytime I'm like feeling anxiety or I'm feeling something is robbing me of my joy, I feel like as soon as I open God's Word, there's always something for me. And there's another thing that I was thinking of too, like how important it is to like surround yourself with good, sound counsel. So if you can find yourself a mentor, someone who is a little older than you, someone who's had a few more years of life ahead of you that can just be someone that you trust. I would say make sure it's someone that you truly trust and who does have a relationship with the Lord. Just surround yourself with good, godly people. There's so much to be said about that. Yeah, I just got off of a break from social media, so Chris's advice, don't compare yourself. I know that these are all basic things, but it's so much easier said than done, but as much as you can, just try to be the best version of who you are and who God made you to be.
That's great. Last question? Yes, right there. Yes, you.
What's your guys' favorite song?
What's your favorite
we're
song?
gonna get to yours too.
We will, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And then you right there. Yes. What's your favorite song? Let's hear from everybody right now. What's your favorite song right now?
Okay, right now, and again, not saying it because he's sitting right here, it's Nothing Else. It's the best. It's just so good, and it's so like, I don't even know how to describe it. It really puts my heart in a place where it's like, it calls out a lot of the things that I struggle with. It calls out a lot of these like really deep things that you really don't want to admit to a bunch of people. And then it puts it in this beautiful way where you're just like, I don't need any of that. And the reason that I struggle with that is because I forget that you're all I need and that you're all I want. And I just love it so much.
Johnson?
I really love I love the Upper Room, their new album. I don't really have a favorite song right now, but I've been listening to that. It's like, there's 4 songs and it's 2 hours and I literally cannot stop listening. But I don't know if you've ever heard Upper Room, they're amazing.
Chris?
I just heard Breakthrough by Red Rocks Worship. And I listened to that thing on repeat about 4 times in the span of the 20 minutes that I had to listen to music today. So check it out, Breakthrough, Red Rocks.
Cody?
I said it before, but their entire set tonight from start to finish
You're so encouraging.
is unbelievable. So it's a good thing you came. It's going to be awesome. I mean that with all my heart. I'm not just saying it. I mean it.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Jenna?
Again, I love Nothing Else. It's like one of my go-tos right now before I leave worship. But also I love Raise a Hallelujah from Bethel. It sounds awesome.
My favorite is an old song called The Heart of Worship by Matt Redman. Bringing it back.
What's your favorite Carmen song?
My favorite Carmen song. The Champion is
How
up
could it be
there.
anything else? It's got to be the champion.
Who's in the house?
There we go. Well,
Sing
thanks
about the
guys so
best.
much. Let's pray, and then we're gonna have